backed up a giant truck to the treasury, stole like $300 million, left the whole country, and bought up all of Cuba's game.
How heavily tied was the mafia into Cuba?
It was Cuba. Basically, Batista was an extension of the American mob. The mob at the time had been eyeing Cuba as a gangster's paradise. But Batista was one of them. He was basically best friends with Lansky. Lucky Luciano was extremely key. He basically was the architect. The ones that were basically his disciples, first Lansky and then Santo Trafficante. One of the first things that Batista did, hired Meyer Lansky, the head of the gaming commission. He actually cleaned up the casinos.
Oh my God!
The FBI swarming a Miami house and taking a man into custody in the area of Southwest.
So say goodnight to the bad guy.
The agency says the 28-year-old was picked up after the grand jury indicted him and 5 others.
Adrian, welcome to Honor Among Thieves.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it, Nelson.
We were supposed to do this like years ago. That's crazy,
bro. It was. It's been years in the making. Like this is my second podcast. Like
cool.
4 years apart. So
that's funny.
Hopefully, I do them a little more often than this. But
get the story out there. You know.
But yeah, it's been a long time coming, man.
Definitely.
Sure.
Fresh off the plane from California.
Yes, sir.
Or as I like
Los Angeles.
As I like to call it, California.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's been that way. It seems to want to stay that way.
It's a shame. I'd probably live there if it wasn't such a communist shithole.
You know, it's one of those things where there's good things and bad things about places, and you know, the weather's great.
Definitely. So, Adrian, you hit me up about the book you just wrote.
I did.
Which I'm gonna go get.
Yeah.
It is called. Here we go. It's called Cubela Libre.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you guys go check it out. He just autographed a copy for me.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and I also have I started my own podcast.
Nice.
And it's chapter by chapter reading of each one.
Awesome,
so each episode is a chapter. I have the introduction, dedications, and chapter 1.
Nice.
So I got a couple episodes already up.
Cool. So Adrian, we're gonna talk about what.
Yeah.
You know, what inspired you to write the book and everything. We're going to do let's talk a little bit about who you are.
100%.
So you're Cuban American?
I am.
First generation?
Yes, sir.
Parents came over from Cuba. You said your dad came in 62?
My dad came in 62. He was 20 years old. My mom, she was 17 when she came. She was in 1969. So they're both from Havana, but they met separately. They actually met in Venezuela, like years later. So even though I'm Cuban, like I was born well outside of the process of actually being in the island. But yeah, man. No, I grew up in Miami. My parents have had crazy lives, but then they got back to Miami and started their lives again there. And I grew up with grandparents that never spoke English. So I didn't even speak English until I was 6. So I hablo español perfectamente. Like people think, especially out in LA, they think I'm Armenian or some shit.
Bro, when I went in January, I was at a club that shall not be named.
Yeah.
So and all the girls were like, "Are you Armenian?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "No, I'm Armenian."
Yeah.
I've never met an Armenian person.
No. Apparently, it's like I have an Armenian look because they're like
Cubans
whitish.
kind of look that way.
Yeah. Because everybody over there thinks that Hispanic people look like Mexicans.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And I get it because I'm in California.
That's why it's California.
And
then it's just there's a variety.
It's funny because the only two Armenian
realize.
people I know are like Patrick Bet David and Lena the Plug. So it's like, dude, I don't even what stratosphere would I ever meet those people? No.
100%. No, I have a few really good Armenian friends that I made from either. One actually was from Miami that moved to LA, and then a few people that I met out there, and they're great people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I for some reason they don't really know how to peg me with like what are you? And then I start speaking Spanish. They're like, oh, okay.
But I'm not Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
But no, born and raised here. Went to Catholic school all the time. Went to Columbus back in the day. So all my Columbus people, if you're out there. And then I got I really wasn't into the whole Cuban history stuff, like honestly, until COVID. So I got really obsessed during COVID. And the trigger was the Hamilton musical, believe it or not. So
That's funny.
I was there with my kid. We were watching it nonstop over and over again. I memorized all the stuff. And then at one point I started thinking man, there's got to be something like this for the Cuban Revolution.
Right.
There got to be something that like engages you into your own history and all this stuff. And I wanted that for my kid. And I was like trying to figure out like, okay, well, you know, I got time. It's COVID. Like, there's not much else to do. What do I do? I didn't want it to be about the Castros because they're too controversial. It'd be like springtime for Hitler type deal. So I was all right, gotta find a different thing. And you know, my dad being old school, one of his favorite phrases is Raúl Castro's un maricón. that's his, you know, nothing against gay people. I love my gays. But he's very much an anti-Castro person and didn't like Raúl very much, and that was always like the rumor.
That's part of the reason I'm such a Tony Montana fan.
Yeah, 100%.
Because he started the movie like, yo communist.
You're a maricón.
Yo communist, man.
Yo communist.
There's nothing you can do to me that Castro has not already done. You know? And I was like, oh, you were already friends.
My favorite, actually, the segue. My favorite thing with Scarface, I'll never forget it, is on the TNT version. Instead of saying, it's like, hey, it was like, how'd you get that scar eating pussy? It's like they say, how'd you get that scar eating pineapple? it's like, how you got a scar eating pineapple, man?
That's funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's the randomest thing that they had there. And then I always love when he says pineapple. it's just like the most random thing. But yeah, it's like, a pineapple? You got a pineapple? Anyway.
That's funny. But yeah.
So I COVID. So I literally
time on your hands, yeah.
Googled and you can do this too at home. It's still there. I check it like almost every few months. Raúl Castro, homosexual. Those 3 words. The first thing that pops up is a CIA document that from the JFK assassination files. And it says, weaknesses and derogatory information. In the middle of the document, it says, Raúl Castro is a known homosexual and was caught making advances with Rolando Cubela in his Camp Columbia headquarters.
Wow. And this is a declassified CIA dossier.
CIA dossier from October 1963.
Wow.
In the Miami office, the JM Wave office. There you go. So I was like, whoa.
That's wild.
this is wild. And I'm like, wait a second. Who the hell is Cubela? And that's when the rabbit hole came down. So I learned about this dude. He was a University of Havana student. He was best friends with Jose Antonio Echeverria, who was a student leader back then. When the coup happened in 52, which the book is really, the book covers basically New Year's 1952 through the end of the actual coup. So a few days after the 1952, March 1952 coup. The book actually is the full book will be 67 chapters. Right now, the first part of the book is 29 chapters. And the whole book will cover all the way through Fidel Castro's Moncada attacks.
So would you say this is like completely historically accurate, or is there some historical fiction?
I would say it's 95% accurate.
Wow.
In that
cool.
I really tried to, in terms of the events that happen, all the stuff.
Sure it's all there.
There's a few interpersonal stuff, like there's like a relationship that the Cubela guy has that I made up a little bit, but just it helps with the story. Like very few, characters that I've kind of thrown in there. Like there's like a guy named Sal that's like works for Santo Trafficante. So I didn't know who it was, but it was just like I needed a vehicle to kind of get the information out.
That's cool.
But other than that, yeah, it's like I'm a big AI aficionado. I've been using AI for 4 or 5 years now, like to do different things, mostly because of this story, because I wanted to get it out there. I live in LA, so I'm like, oh, let's make this into a show. How do I do that? Oh, you need to have a deck. I'm like, I made a deck. I was like, oh, you need to have a script. I was like, well, I'm an artist. I paint. I do all this stuff. I can do a script, but I'll also make it into a graphic novel so that I could get people to like see it. Because it was like, you need a script, you need a storyboard. I'm like, I'll just make both and make a graphic novel.
We gotta talk, because I've had a comic book on the shelf for like 3 years, bro. It's written. The art part is like, but anyway, we'll talk.
You'd be shocked how fast you can turn that around now. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
With AI and stuff.
Yeah. No, and I've just been kind of just using it as an iterative tool. So it's like, okay, then ChatGPT came out with the ability to do anime. So I'm like, oh, yeah, because I had hand drawn the first graphic novel, hand drew it on an iPad and just drew a thing. and then I used AI to upgrade the pictures to make it look cooler. It was all still black and white, but I like upgraded it, used Photoshop. Like it wasn't just like, oh, prompted, there's a comic. Like 'cause you gotta
That's
like
dope,
you
man.
use it as a tool for what we're doing. When ChatGPT came out with the anime stuff, I upgraded it to an anime like manga style comic, and it was like, and then it started popping. And then they had video models, so I got those same animes and then animated them, and then made them into little mini episodes. So I have 2 graphic novels, I have 12 minutes of animated like
sick, man.
like you know
Like an
series
episode. Yeah.
episodes, and then I even have a semi live action one, which tells the story of the guy that was the station chief.
Right.
In JM way back then is ay, ¿qué se me fue? The Ted Shackley. The guy's named Ted Shackley. Funny enough, a friend of mine, he actually kind of looked like him, so I used his image and cast him in the thing. But it shows him actually reading the document that I just told you about the homosexual thing to kind of give the audience like an in to the same rabbit hole that I went down.
So now that you've basically like devoured that whole history of Cuba, how heavily tied, like for real, was the mafia into Cuba?
It was Cuba.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It was the Cuban government. Like basically, Batista was an extension of the American mob. So the mob at the time had been eyeing Cuba for years, even like into the 40s, as a potential, basically gangster's paradise.
Right.
In that they would not have to worry about the U.S. coming in, all this stuff, because it's a foreign country. They wanted to have its own separate thing. Like they wanted an embargo. Right. They wanted to have it like complete, because it was, you know, at the time, especially, I mean, you know, you of all people know how the rise of a lot of organized crime came because of prohibition, came because of a lot of the machinations that were happening here, gambling, prostitution, alcohol, you know, all the things, the vices. Havana became the center of that for the mob and grew even more once Batista took over, because it was almost like an understanding with the prior government. And there was a lot of corruption within that prior government with Carlos Brillo and all of those people. But Batista was one of them, basically. He was basically best friends with Lansky. Like they were pen pals, but, you know, in a lot of ways.
And Batista basically was like a gangster in control of a country.
Yeah. So Batista, it's interesting because he got his start in another revolution in 1937. So he was actually part of the Sergeants' Revolt and led it, which was the elite soldiers and the higher up people were all coming from the really rich families.
Right.
And the soldiers that were actually fighting the wars, getting killed, doing all of the stuff were the poor. Batista basically flipped that on its head, and there was a giant, almost civil war between one of the chapters in the book covers it in Act 3. There was a war between the actual elite, like top officers, and the sergeants and the lower class. There was even a shootout in a building where they had the sergeants took over one of the ships and were bombarding the Hotel Nacional in Havana, while there were snipers in there shooting down at the sergeants. So it was like a war between the armies there. And then once the officers gave up, they went downstairs, and then they got slaughtered, a lot of them, by the sergeants, because there was still animosity. That's how he got his start. And
so because this part of that I've never really looked into, how did the mob and like Lansky and Luciano and all those guys, how did they get into Cuba? Like, how did that connection happen? Like, how did that all start?
It all started with prohibition. It all started with
that far back.
It all started with rum running. It all started with, because obviously, you know, Cuba is
rum,
huge sugar and rum. That's what they do. So rum was always a big part of it. When the U.S. cut it off, Cuba was a natural place to move a lot of their operations. So it became the center of gravity for the alcohol. Like,
Do you know, like, if there was one specific person that thought of the idea, or like one specific person that went over there and was like, "Hey guys, maybe we should."
Lucky
do this?
Luciano was extremely key in this entire process, and he saw he basically was the architect for bringing the mob together there, and the ones that were basically his disciples afterward were first Lansky and then Santo Trafficante, Senior. Junior took over.
And Trafficante ran Florida later. Right?
So Trafficante had a huge bolita racket in Tampa. That's where they got their money. So the Trafficantes were one of the earliest gangsters in Cuba. They had been established there way longer than Lansky and a lot of these guys.
Really?
Yeah, they
How
had
far back?
I think in the 20s or even the 10s. Like they had been there for
Like before World War One? That's nuts.
Yeah, they've been there for a long time.
That's basically right after the Cuba became like an
The family had been like they're like Trafficante Jr. kind of felt very like it was his turn to basically take over. It was his place. Like he felt in a lot of ways more Cuban sometimes than even American.
Really?
Because he spent so much time there, and it was his domain. Like, you know, the other guys were New York and all these other places, but he understood Cuba way better than a lot of these guys. And that's, you know, it was one of the reasons why he was so successful with like knowing which casino to get a piece of and how to navigate the process. Trafficante was actually the youngest person in the room in the 1948 meeting at the Hotel Nacional with Meyer, Lansky, Lucky Luciano, and like
Bugsy
it was like a
Siegel, all those
huge
guys.
amount of gangsters from all over. They had like a conference, basically a Havana conference in 1948, and that's when they split up. Okay, you're gonna have the Sanssouci, you're gonna have this plot, and basically doled out where everybody's places are gonna be within the Havana contingent, basically.
So was it more like, since Trafficante, you're talking about the 1910s, right? So this is way before anybody. Senior, right?
Yeah, it stayed in the family.
What? Right. So that was basically their territory.
Right.
Was it more like when Luciano knew, we got Trafficante down there?
It was more. They were still pretty small in terms of it was less organized. So they were running their thing, but it was more Lucky saw the opportunity and started getting in on his own, getting people in. I mean, it was a gradual process where it led up to it, and then they had some sweetheart deals as well with the CIA and the U.S. because they had actually been helping against the Italians in World War II. So they were like. There was a whole process where in New York that the CIA and a lot of the U.S. Army was basically using the mob to get information about potential smuggling and other stuff from the Italians.
And they had locked down New York's ports, right?
Right. Yeah. Basically, they got the mob to lock down the ports, and then because of the once they started working together, there were already a lot of contacts and elements in between that ended up being rehashed later on because of the Cold War, because of the Cuba affair, because of other political assassinations that were allegedly completed by people that were connected there.
So in relation to the commission, I forgot what year was the commission formulated again with Luciano and Siegel and all those guys? I forgot. I think it was like the 30s?
Something like that.
Late 20s?
Yeah. It was around that time.
So it's safe to say that Cosa Nostra was like in full swing by the time this idea of Cuba came
100%.
around, right?
Yeah, they were already running a lot of the casinos, and they had a piece of it. There was still some local elements to it, and it hadn't been as well organized as in Vegas and other places. In fact, that was one of the things that happened after the coup in '52. One of the first things that Batista did is he hired Meyer Lansky to come in and be the head of the gaming commission.
So in America, we keep the feds at least try to pretend that they don't operate like gangsters, and they're like, we hate these people. In Cuba, it was like, oh no,
Lansky was in the cabinet, bro. Lansky was a cabinet secretary.
That's some gangster shit. Just put like the most notorious gangster. That's funny, bro.
Yeah, but what's funny is that he actually cleaned up the casinos.
Oh my god, it was so bad.
It was so bad.
A mobster came in and cleaned it up. Oh my god.
Ironically, so even though my name, the name of the book is Cubela, there was a book called Cubelo. There was a game called Cubelo.
Cubelo, which was dice, right?
It was dice, but it was completely. It was bullshit. It was like the house.
You lost no matter what.
You lost no matter what. The house always, and they would like tilt the stuff. There was like it was some like weird like thing, and then like
what was the premise of the game?
I don't even know.
That's how bad it was.
That's how bad it was. It was just like they'd make shit up and they'd just steal people's money.
That's funny.
In part 2 of my book, which is not out, there's actually a really funny scene where Richard Nixon gets taken like for $4,000,
Oh my
and
God.
he has to like write a check for, and it almost destroyed his vice presidential nomination. He had to give a speech called the Checkers speech in '52.
As to like why he had a gambling debt or
Well,
whatever.
it was because there was his lawyer Dana Smith supposedly was the one that was doing the gambling and then had to pay money from a slush fund that they called it, that of donors. Back then there were no super PACs, there was no campaign donations, but Nixon had a slush fund from a bunch of rich donors that would help him, supposedly for the election. He used that to pay off the debt for the casino.
Oh my God.
And he said like, my lawyer for some reason used the wrong checking account or something. Just completely made up some bullshit. But the rumors are, which I indulged, where it was that actually it was him that lost the gambling money. And then I in the book it's pretty funny. I have him like meeting with like one of the casino bosses, and then his lawyer comes in and is like, Dana, why did you do this? He's like, what did I do? He's like, you lost this money. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, remember? Pay the man.
And $4,000 was a lot of money in the
4 grand was a lot of
Is
money.
this the 50s? No.
This is 52.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
That's a
52
lot.
or 50.
That's a ton of money. That's a
actually
fortune.
53.
Could have bought a house with $5,000 or $6,000 back then. I
Oh
think.
yeah, no,
That's
a
crazy.
lot of money. It was a decent amount. So yeah,
Nixon got into
but
gambling
Nixon got
down
into.
the-
But what happened was that check. Somebody found the check, like it was a reporter, and then they started asking questions, and then he got into a lot of trouble for anti-corruption. Eisenhower had already picked him as his running mate, and they were asking him to quit. In fact, the date they had scheduled Nixon did as a counter, scheduled a speech for himself, a national speech that he was going to deliver about the whole scandal. And right before the call, Eisenhower calls him and says, "At the end of the speech, I need you to drop out of the ticket." And Nixon says to basically pound sand that he's not dropping out, and that you're gonna have to do a lot more to get rid of Richard Nixon. And so he gave the speech, and part of the speech was saying like, I confess that I have taken one gift in my entire life for this, and it was this puppy named Checkers that a friend of ours gave us that my child absolutely adores. And if you need to take this dog, if we need to get rid of this dog in order to prove my own worth, then by God, then I'll do it if I have to. But my child will be extremely sad, and like just basically like playing into the dogs thing.
That's
and it's
funny.
like, and if you want to keep me on the ticket, or please write into your senators about me keeping Richard Nixon. And there was like a flood of people that wrote in. It's like, no, you need to keep Richard Nixon in and all this stuff. So he played it politically brilliantly, because he got he changed the narrative about being about a puppy dog that he had received, as opposed to gambling debt in Cuba. Like it was absolutely brilliant, and he ended up, because of it, staying on the ticket, and then eventually becoming the Richard Nixon we know, and becoming president and all the stuff later.
That's
But it almost derailed his entire career, which is nuts.
So what year does Batista take over?
1952. So
52.
March of 1952.
So in 52, had he already, before he took over, had he already been in talks with like Lansky and Luciano and these guys?
Yeah, he knew those guys. He had been president. So basically after the
52 was the second time he became
52
president.
was the second time.
Okay. Yeah,
so
yeah.
he kind of pulled a Trump. He was president for a while, went away for a bit, and then came back.
We're back.
He's like, we're Batista. I'm Batista.
Batista never quits. It's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
He I remember because I know that much. He was president twice. The first time, and then he left, and then he came back and did like a military coup and took over,
Basically.
something like that.
Yeah,
So he had already been doing business with the mob the first time he was president.
correct.
When was that?
So the Sergeant's Revolt was 37. He was not president until about 1940. But that whole time, he was basically the power behind the
mob.
the presidency. And then 1944, there was another election. He didn't run. Carlos Prioso Carras had won that one. The prior one, I think it was So I believe there were two presidents afterward. It was Raúl Grau San Martin, and then Carlos Prioso Carras. And Carlos Prio was from, it was 44 to 48 was Grau Martin, and then 48 to 52 was Prio.
And that whole time, Batista was in the shadows, kind of like doing his
Batista was in the shadows. Mainly, so after Batista left, he went to the U.S. He got really rich. He's in New York for a while. He's in Miami for a while. He's kind of enjoying his, it wasn't exile. It was like self-imposed exile. But in 1950, he came back and became a senator. And he was kind of preparing himself already for a run. And what happened was, and I cover this in the book, which may or may not have happened on New Year's Eve, but I wanted to embellish because it was cool. The mob, through Batista, had tried to bribe Prioso Carras to resign the presidency early 1952 with about $250,000 US.
A lot of money back then.
A lot of money back
More
then.
like, probably like 2.5 million.
He basically told them to pound sand. And that's when they decided, okay, we need to get in there. Because the Auténtico Party, which was you could think of the way, it's crazy how many similarities there are back then. You can think of Batista as Trump. You can think of Prioso Carras as like the Democrats, in that they're very...
like progressive, left-wing.
Progressive. They're more center, if anything. Like they're like the establishment Democrats in that sense.
Kind of like JFK.
Yeah, like sort of JFK. It'd be like Clinton-esque,
okay.
like that, like that aspect of it. And then but very corrupt, like very corrupt. Like there was a gangsterismo, all this other stuff in the 40s,
like
late 40s, all that stuff.
all that kind of,
Yeah, very corrupt. And then there was a wing of that party that broke off called the Ortodoxos, which was led by Eduardo Chivas. You can think of Chivas like Bernie Sanders. He's very he had a Sunday night show. He was like very big into like anti-corruption, all these things, calling people out. There was a guy that was in the party, Jose Aleman. He had been the education secretary, and apparently one night in the middle of the night, backed up a giant truck to the treasury, stole like $300 million, left the whole country, and bought up all of Key Biscayne.
What a gangster.
Oh
my God.
He bought Key Biscayne.
What a gangster.
And he made a Miami baseball stadium. It was Miami Stadium. He had and after all that, he gets all that done. He dies of a heart attack at like age 50 something.
Oh my God.
And his son inherits all of it, which is Jose Aleman Jr.,
right?
Who was another character in the story, who had grown up in Cuba but then moved there, had been childhood friends with Jose Antonio and all these others, so he knew like them from back then, and was very key in when all the stuff was happening with Batista. So the revolution against Batista was very helpful with getting arms, having the people stay in Miami when they couldn't be in Cuba. That whole thing. He had owned a few hotels, like the Trade Winds Motel in Miami Beach, a bunch of other properties. They actually had been the spring training home for the Dodgers for a few years before they got stolen away in Vero Beach by they had made Dodger land or something like that. up there.
So now that I remember the whole bullshit case against Lucky Luciano that got him deported.
Mm-hmm.
This was like kind of like a way to get Lucky back in this hemisphere, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
He had been deported, but he was able to be in Cuba,
right?
Because the U.S. wasn't, it wasn't.
Correct.
They weren't there. So that was one of the reasons why that 1948 conference happened in Cuba, is because Lucky couldn't go to the U.S. So they brought everybody else to Cuba to be able to talk to him. And then Lucky basically laid out his whole vision of a narco-state within Cuba. If you own the state,
you own the country.
You own the country. You're at the same level as the U.S. Like you have a seat at the United Nations. You're able to influence it. Ironically, it worked. It's just the communists are the one that did it instead of the gangsters. It's just a different gang that ended up basically running Luciano's playbook. Except they, instead of it being drugs and hookers, it was communism and doctors, I guess. Doctor slaves.
Can you imagine, bro? Can you imagine what would have happened, like, if it went the other way? Castro never took over. Like, Cuba would be so different. Because
the world would be so different.
If the mob controlled Cuba, right, and then it rolled into the 80s with like Pablo Escobar, that would have been wild. That would have been bro. What would have happened? Like
it was insane. Like Havana, you can think of Havana back then, especially in the time period from 52 to 59, especially like in the 55, 56 era, as a 10x Miami plus Vegas. Like we're talking the tourism, the tropical vibes, like all the crazy clubbing and all the stuff of Miami, thrown on top of that with the gambling and the debauchery and that end of Vegas. That's what Havana was. That's why it's such a huge draw for everybody from the U.S. and it was making more. It was actually bankrupting Vegas a little bit. Like we actually had a lot of people moving from Vegas to be card sharks because going back to the story with Meyer, he became the gambling czar basically, and he went in and cleaned up all of these bullshit games because the way his stance was, the house has the odds. Why are we going to fuck with that and actually mess up the process? We want people to trust it enough that they're going to actually come here and give us their money and then win a little bit. But if you run a fair game, you always win. And so he actually went in and cleaned up and got rid of a lot of the chicanery that was happening and made it into the mecca that it became over those few years, where we'd have Frank Sinatra coming in and all these celebrities and all the things, like what you think of as like classic, Cuba, that was the thing that was Meyer Lansky's doing. Believe it or not, which is it's the irony of ironies in terms of like the criminal element.
A Jewish gangster.
Right.
He's a marketing genius.
Yes, he definitely is.
That's great.
Businessman for sure.
What roles did each one of them play? Like what did Meyer do in Cuba? What did Lucky Luciano do in Cuba? What did Bugsy do? Like what did each one of these guys do in Cuba?
So I'd say Meyer kind of was the organizer. I think unfortunately for Lucky, he wasn't so lucky in that once he kind of gave out his vision, the feds caught on to him. They made sure he stayed in Italy. There really wasn't much for Lucky to do after the fact.
Was it like they gave the mob an ultimatum, like either you keep Lucky over there
basically,
or we're gonna find a way to bust you guys and kill?
Basically,
okay.
they wanted to make sure that of all the people, like, no, Lucky has to not be part of any of this stuff, and they didn't really want the heat, so they kind of were like
they voted him out.
They cut him out. So yeah, Lucky, although he was kind of the mastermind and the visionary for all this stuff, he never really got to experience the
full
the process of it. The ones that were Meyer Lansky and then Trafficante. Those two were the main guys. The other ones had like played their parts in they owned the casinos. They run the process, but
like they each had their piece of it.
Yeah, each had their piece. Like, and then Meyer had Hotel Nacional. He also had started and owned the Montmartre, which was a big location for the book, because one of the biggest events that people don't know about, and it ended up being a catalyst for a lot of the violence that happened in the revolution, was in 1956. There was a man named Antonio Blanco Rico, who was the head of the secret police of Havana. It was called the SIM, SIM. He was assassinated at the Montmartre by Cubela
Wow.
in October of 1956. Basically shot down and while waiting for an elevator, and his wife had gotten shot, but he got killed. And then right after, this guy Rafael Salas Canizares, who was the top enforcer in Havana for Batista, went down there. There was a whole chase of these guys and others into the Haitian embassy. There had already been 12 guys that had been hiding out in the Haitian embassy beforehand from doing different terrorist acts or bombings and other things. I don't think anybody had gotten killed yet, or hurt, but it had already started a lot. And that guy, who was this really fat dude, I want him to be played by Gabriel Iglesias. So that's imagine him with being pissed off. He grabbed a Tommy gun and went into the Haitian embassy, even though it was a sovereign ground, and started spraying everybody. A Haitian employee was killed. 13 of these guys were killed, and while on the floor after being shot and killed or almost killed one of these guys as he's dying, shoots Canizares in the stomach under his. He was so fat that his bulletproof vest didn't go all the way down, so they got him on the underbelly, and he died the next day as well. So imagine two of the top brass from the regime die within 12 hours of each other. It was at 3 a.m. Blanco Rico's killed, and then the next day after he rushes into the Haitian embassy, he's killed. And then there's an international incident where the Haitians are like, this is our sovereign ground, and you have a guy coming in and taking us. So they had to pay millions of dollars to the Haitians to make sure that was good. It was crazy, but that catalyzed Batista to then do a violent crackdown on the rebels. The Humboldt massacre happened later on after that. One of the guys, Juan Pablo, it's coming to me. It'll come back to me. So one of the perpetrators with Cubela, they found him in Havana and then shot him dead on the spot. Another leader in Santiago, he was killed as well. So there's all this violence, and then that sparked, and then 2 months later, Fidel Castro lands on the east of the island, and they bombard him too because they were already expecting him to come. He took his Granma ship, sailed it over there. He had been trying to coordinate with Frank Pais, who was the other leader on the Santiago side, but they botched it so badly that they got there 3 days late and landed in the wrong spot. He had brought 70 people, and I think 60 of them got killed. Jesus. It was I think only I think it was 12 people had survived, wow, including Raul, Che Guevara, and Fidel, and they were presumed dead in the jungles because they just bombarded them. They blew up blowing the ship up, all that stuff. So that whole time frame was really the start of it. And when Fidel was found to be alive, and the New York Times did a piece of him the next February, that then catalyzed Jose Antonio in the Havana side to move up his process to try to assassinate Batista, which they attempted to in March of 1957. They got 50 guys and basically rushed the palace. At the same time, there were a smaller contingent that went to the radio station in Caracol, the station there, with Jose Antonio saying, the dictator is dead, rush to the streets, la 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 la. Apparently, Batista should have been at his desk, but wasn't. He had gone upstairs to the bathroom or something. It was a random thing. Didn't get him. 50 people died. Mostly the students had come in and some of the army guys. And then when they went to the radio station, they chased Jose Antonio out of the radio station. He got out in front of the steps of the university with a gun. They shot him dead in front of the university, and he was killed. And then Cubela had to escape. So all of these events transpired within a few months of each other, and the catalyst was this assassination by Cubela that really got things going, and then the violence kind of like went from there.
So in relation to the mob, they see all this chaos, right? And it happens on and off because it got worse as the 50s progressed. But even when they were trying to put their teeth into Cuba, it was already chaotic. So what was their attitude about it?
They saw Cuba as a place that violence happened, that coups happened, that power changed, and they saw Fidel as just the next guy up. They figured, pay this guy off, we'll do our thing, and then it will just keep on rolling as we go.
So the mob tried to do business with Fidel?
They tried.
Really?
They tried.
I didn't know that.
Funny enough, the guy that Fidel put in charge of gaming afterward was Frank Sturgis, who was also connected to Santo Trafficante. So he was the connection between the two. He had been... there's rumors, and I indulged them, that Frank was CIA, or at least was working with CIA very early on. And so he had been placed there by the Americans to kind of keep track of what was happening with the revolution and be on the inside. He had gotten close to Fidel through that. And then he was also pretty close with the mob because of that connection through it. So he actually worked with Santo Trafficante, and they had been trying to do some of the stuff. But they put Trafficante in jail. They imprisoned Trafficante. Wow. And the only reason that he got out was they paid $1 million to the regime to get him out after the fact.
Why'd they throw him in there? Just
because Fidel is an idiot. Because actually, the one that killed the whole process and kind of killed the mob's hopes for it was the first prime minister that they appointed, Urrutia, who was a judge in Santiago who had let off some of the revolutionaries and had been pretty friendly to the revolution. He named him as the czar, and he was super Christian, super like white, very very straight laced, and he said the thing that is the problem with Havana is all of the decadence and gambling and all this stuff. So he made gambling illegal. He shut down the alcohol. He did all the stuff, and it destroyed the tourism and got Santo Trafficante in jail. And then they quickly started undoing that when they realized that it was really going to mess it up. But it was already too late. And there was already people breaking stuff. There was also a big anti-mob mentality because of this jealousy of all this decadence, all these tourisms, but then the people that were actually living there weren't getting stuff. So there was, they when the revolution happened, they were breaking a lot of the casinos. They were breaking a lot of the machines. They were they had these basically parking meters that were excessive, breaking all those parking meters and getting all the coins out. It was chaos, and so. They were hoping to ride out the chaos, but once they saw the true nature of the regime and these guys really are communist and they're not even competent. they're just kind of winging it, but then also just not there to play the same game. That's when they realized, these guys, we need to get rid of these guys, and that's when they actually turned to the CIA and were trying to help and be recruited to kill Castro.
Wait, hold on. The mob approached the CIA about killing Castro?
The CIA approached the mob, and the mob was also very interested in assisting with it.
I thought that was all CIA government stuff.
Johnny Roselli, baby. One of the reasons why they reconnected with Johnny Roselli was to hire him to kill Fidel. And they were trying with a few different people. And one of the people that they tried with after he had flipped was Cubela. So Cubela was actually a CIA asset, and his code name was Amlash. And he had been given a bunch of tasks after in 1961 to basically, because he had become part of the regime at that point. So what happened with Cubela as a quick, after the assassination attempt of Batista in 1957, Cubela went to Miami for a while, stayed with Jose Aleman in his hotel, kind of got his stuff together, and then helped gun run for the revolution in the jungle to Escambray. Brought a bunch of there was a whole boat going down the Miami River that was full of arms that he went on, back to Escambray, brought those arms to them, joined up with Che Guevara and all these guys in that theater of it, while Fidel and Raul stayed on the east side. And he was actually part of the Battle of Santa Clara there was a giant armored train that they basically had derailed and got all of the arms that were heading towards the east of the country to fight for themselves. So they basically took all of their guns and immediately, I think 200 soldiers flipped to the revolution at that point. And this is December of 58. So that battle was what got Batista to think in his mind, like, oh, this is done. They're going to come to me next. He already started planning his exit at that point and then exited on Jan 1 of 59 in the evening. You know, the famous Godfather 2 scene where he leaves the country. That's how it happened. But what's interesting is because they were the Cubela and Che and all these guys were more on the west side, they actually got to the palace first. And the first person that was in charge of the palace was Cubela. Che wanted to be in charge, but the soldiers that were with Cubela, which had been people from the DRE, people from Havana, very anti-communist, did not want to give up the palace to the M26. And so Fidel, in the 8 days on the way back from Santiago in his little tour, he stopped by Cárdenas, which is the home of Jose Antonio Echeverria's family, which he'd grown up with Cubela, to try to convince them to come with him to then convince Cubela to give up the palace, and they told him to go fuck himself. They hated Castro as well. But the only reason that they actually were successful in taking it, Fidel trained a dove, to land on his shoulder and gave a speech in the middle of Havana that's saying, the war is over. Why do we have to have any more guns? Why do we have to have all these, any more violence? Mothers of Cuba, tell your sons to get their guns and then just give them to the government so that we can make sure that there's no more fighting and no more death. Yeah. And he had a dove land on him as he's giving this speech, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's Jesus. He's the chosen by God. He's the guy. And that is first of all, that's why the American right is so obsessed with gun control and making sure that people have guns, because that moment is how the communists took over in Havana, because the entire Havana contingent, they had arms and guns hidden all over the city because they knew the city. They were from Havana. Fidel wasn't from Havana. He was from Santiago. So he'd come over. He was still not in his element. And he basically used that move to disarm his opponents and then prevent a civil war between the communist faction, basically, and the non-communist faction. Which he wasn't. And Fidel was very nebulous about his own views at that point. He was like, no, I'm not a communist. Because Che Guevara and Raul Castro on his team. But no, I'm not really a communist. He only declared he was a socialist after the Bay of Pigs. Right. But he, everybody knew at that point.
So let's get into two things. So let's get more deeper into that CIA mob assassination attempt of Fidel. Mm-hmm. And then obviously when that doesn't pan out, what does the mob do in transition to Vegas and all that?
100%. So one of the things that the mob was very concerned with was the casino properties themselves being preserved. And they didn't want a war in Havana where things
they had
were
all their properties.
Yeah, they didn't want to have it bombed. They wanted all this stuff. The big issue that they saw and ended up flipping on in the 1960 election was that Richard Nixon was very much on the side of, I want to bomb the shit out of these people, especially as revenge for his little incident from 1952. I'm
gonna bomb a country because they
stole my exactly. Like he had a big chip in his shoulder about Cuba, and I had already been making plans for a much bigger invasion than what the Bay of Pigs ended up becoming. In fact, the Bay of Pigs operation was planned by Richard Nixon through a program called Operation 40 that he had set up beforehand, which was kind kind of like a splinter of the CIA. It was still part of the intelligence apparatus, but it was Frank Sturgis was part of it. There's a bunch of guys within that process. So, when all the things were happening with Cuba and like the embargo happening and the socialism stuff happening with Eisenhower and all this stuff from 52 to 60, he had already been in the middle of it as vice president. He actually met with Castro when Fidel had come over for United Nations, and Nixon kind of was like, this guy's either really naive or he's an evil bastard that is gonna really do some terrible stuff, and he's a little both. But he had planned out all this stuff. So when the mob got word that Nixon was going to destroy the place, that was one of the factors that had them want to help Kennedy to succeed. And so when Kennedy won because of the mob and dead people voting in Illinois, all the things that happened, Roselli, all this stuff, they had been pushing that and one of the main reasons was of Cuba. And so when that didn't pan out, because
rumor has it,
because they switched the operations.
Tell me you've seen The Irishman.
I've seen The Irishman.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, that could have happened.
Yeah.
No one knows, but
it's true. No, it's one of those things. When that didn't happen and they were trying to get things going, it devolved into what we saw. But like in terms of the mob, their main process again was trying to keep it intact, and then trying to get rid of Fidel, because they knew that Fidel is the figurehead. If we kill him, kind of everything else will fall apart. And so the mob actually, the CIA met with Roselli. They had their operatives out there. They almost poisoned him at one point. They tried to do an exploding cigar. They tried to do poisoned his milkshake. He had milkshakes all the time. They tried to poison one of those. Like they're trying a million different things. It was like hundreds of things that they were trying. They tried to fuck with his scuba gear at one point because he liked going scuba diving. And then Fidel would counter because he had a bunch of people that were lookalikes that would go out into different things. So it was this cat and mouse game between the CIA and the mob on one end, and then Castro and the Russians basically and on their end with the KGB. I knew there was a deeper
reason why I like the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they hated Fidel.
Oh man.
Here's a crazy one. So who was the? I always forget his name, and it's killing me. The guy that killed Lee Harvey Oswald. You remember the one that actually shot him in?
It's on the. Yeah.
It's gonna come to me. That guy, he was a club owner in Dallas. He's the one that bailed out Santo Trafficante from prison.
Oh wow. He's the one that sent Cuba. $1 million.
He's the one that sent the $1 million. He's the one that went to go get him. So there's so many connections like that. And I was like, wait. That guy, the one that that killed.
So the CIA saved Santo Trafficante from Fidel?
Basically.
Wow.
Basically.
Dude, it's so crazy how anti-organized crime the feds are now. And how, basically organized crime, it's all but gone in America, but
sure.
It's not what it was. It's different, but it's not on the level it used to be. So it's crazy how anti-organized crime the feds are now, and how heavily tied the mob was to the American government and
100%.
World history, really. If you think about it, it's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. It all started with World War II because they kind of, it was like an enemy of my enemy is my friend type of process, and then that kind of evolved into all.
And if you think
things.
about it, the mob was never really anti-America.
No,
they loved it.
They love capitalism.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
they're criminals, but they don't hate America.
Exactly.
So
they're patriotic criminals.
Right. So it's nuts to see how intertwined all these major figureheads of the mafia were into not just the fabric of the United States, but world events, that affected the world forever.
Yeah. That's all about power. They had they saw they were a power in and of themselves, and then the CIA obviously was a big power, and once their interests were aligned in some ways, it made sense for them to work together to make it happen. Obviously, things changed
Right, of course.
as the years went on, and a lot of the drug stuff started happening and popping up here. That I think changed the nature of the relationship in a lot of ways.
Question for you. Vito Genovese gets popped for selling heroin in the 50s. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with Cuba. That happened in New York. However, was there any dope smuggling in that era in Cuba?
There definitely was. It wasn't to the level.
Was
that
it heroin?
Is now. I don't think there was as much heroin. I think it was more it was actually mostly cocaine.
In the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Tell me about that.
Wow. I don't know too much about it.
Well, tell me what you know.
Well, Trafficante, they always thought that Trafficante was a drug dealer because his name. He mostly
Trafficante,
did
of course.
But he really
Trafficker.
like they actually were doing a lot of trafficking as well.
So Trafficante was moving cocaine through Havana in the 50s?
I believe so. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure. But I'm pretty sure.
So what's out there that alludes to this? Like what?
Yeah,
not much.
Yeah, not much in terms of like it's me just kind of remembering things. I read up a lot of different stuff, but it wasn't a focus on it. But
Coke
I'm pretty
didn't
sure.
become mainstream until like 1979.
I'm pretty sure it was pretty early days on it, but yeah.
Wow.
But yeah,
I mean that's why heroin was big in New York in the 60s, because cocaine was way too expensive.
Right.
You've seen Godfather of Harlem?
I have not.
It's a fantastic.
I gotta check that one out.
Jose Miguel Batlle.
Yes.
The Cuban mob boss from the Numbers Racket in the 60s.
There's a book called The Corporation.
The Corporation by T.J. English, fantastic book.
The precursor to that one is Havana Nocturne, and that is a lot of what I got a lot of the info about Trafficante and all the stuff from that book.
So Jose Miguel Batlle, there's a fictionalized. I mean, some of it is true, but there's a fictionalized version of him played by Yul Acevedo in the Godfather of Harlem series. Fantastic show. Whoever hasn't seen it, please watch it. A lot of it is bullshit and fictionalized, but there's a lot of like historical guy. It's just very entertaining. Yeah. So Jose Miguel Batlle is a major point in I think season 4, where Bumpy Johnson, who was Frank Lucas's mentor, right? Which is bullshit. Even the Johnson's family is like, bro, he was like. You know, he knew him for like 2 seconds. But anyway, Jose Miguel Batlle ends up through a CIA contact because he's trying to fight Fidel and all that shit. They end up getting coke that's seized by the government. They get it basically for free. And then in the show, he hooks up with Bumpy, and then they start pushing coke because they're basically getting it dirt cheap, right? So it cancels out because back then, in the show, like someone tries to buy an ounce of coke and it's like fucking $5,000. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's super expensive. That's why no one could do coke. It was the rich man's drug. So it's funny that you bring that up. Yeah. Because Jose Miguel Batlle and all that shit and the coke and the CIA, I totally see that plausible. 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, there were. I remember reading from different things that there was something to that. It wasn't as big. Like I think it was like a smaller portion of what they were doing. Like they were more on the gambling side of things as much, but it was a piece of it at least.
That's sick. Yeah. All right, so let's get into individual stories basically as towards the end of the revolution. So let's start with Meyer Lansky. And obviously, Lucky Luciano gets banished way before all this happens, like in the beginning of the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know what happened to him. Basically, the feds approached the mob, and they're like, listen, buddy, we're going to let you do whatever you want in that country, but if Lucky Luciano's involved, we're going to crack down on you, or you guys are fucked. So basically. They sent Lucky Luciano on his way. Meyer Lansky towards the revolution-ish. What's up with him?
So Lansky, he always saw himself as a legitimate businessman. He never really saw himself completely. But he ran a bunch of gambling hotels and places in Florida and in Miami as well as in Cuba. So he was always going back and forth. Like Lansky was like a young version of the old dude from Godfather 2. Like that guy was not really the main dude. In fact, I think his name was the name of the guy that Nixon spoke to in that casino when they were like doing that. So there was.
Was it Heyman Roth?
It was Roth. Yeah, Roth was the name of the actual guy that was trying to fuck with it. So I think that's where that connection from. But in terms of Lansky, he owned a bunch of the hotels. He had a bunch of he had a huge power in Cuba itself because of his connection with Batista. So when all of that fell, he got out of Cuba, and it was like, he kind of washed his hands of
Business
the whole
as
thing.
usual in
Business
the
as
US.
usual in
Okay.
Miami and New York and stuff. And then, Trafficante it was more personal for him because it was basically his home and his hometown is what he felt like. But for Lansky, it was just like,
Whatever.
cost of doing business. Like, all right, I'll just move on to another place, another thing.
So is that why is Trafficante the one that approached the CIA?
Trafficante was very interested in getting rid of Fidel, and he
Okay.
even though the CIA contacted Roselli, but Trafficante had been doing his own process, and I think through Sturgis himself got to the CIA. In fact, so here's a really interesting story with Frank Sturgis. As he was part of this, you find him everywhere, and then Sturgis actually was a burglar for Richard Nixon in the Watergate scandal. So this is how connected he is to all these guys. So he's one of those guys. At one point, there's this girl named Marita Lorenz, right? She was 19 at the time and was the daughter of a German fishing captain. And Fidel had just gotten in power. He saw this girl and he was she was enamored with the guy, and so they ended up starting to sleep together. Sturgis finds out about all this, and he's like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to kind of get in and try to because at this point Sturgis had left. He had gotten fired. He'd had a big falling out with them, started working with Trafficante, started working with the CIA. So he was kind of the connection between the two. And at one point he recruits Lorenz to murder Fidel, and he gives her a gun, and he gives they have all sorts of stuff, and they know where they're gonna be and all the stuff. They set up a room to kind of just listen in on this whole process, and her job is to lure Fidel over to this room and then shoot him dead. Basically, she lures him in. Sturgis is listening to this whole process as they go. They start talking, and she can't do it. She wants to wants to do this thing for her country. Her and Sturgis had an affair and been together, so he was kind of pushing on that, and so it was almost like a lovers three
Lovers triangle.
love triangle there. And so at one point Fidel goes to her, it's like, they sent you to kill me, didn't they? And she goes, yes. And then he's like, show me the gun. And she pulls out the gun, and then he grabs the gun while it's in her hand and puts it on his head. And he goes, okay, shoot me. Go ahead. Kill me. I want you to do it. Go for it. And she's just there, and she's like, I can't do it. He's like, I know. And then he puts on, and then they fuck. Sturgis is listening to us the entire time.
God.
Just
Dude.
so angry. And she gets pregnant.
Oof.
And here's the crazy one. She gets pregnant, and then at a certain point when she's almost done with her pregnancy, she gets kidnapped and wakes up and isn't pregnant anymore.
Ooh.
And apparently they took the baby.
No way. That's crazy.
But then we find out years later the baby's in Cuba with Fidel.
That's wild.
I don't know. They're still very nebulous as to who did it. I don't think it was the CIA. Why would they give the baby to Fidel?
Yeah,
Maybe it
probably
was the
Fidel.
Russians. Maybe it was the Cubans or something. But they
They
took.
did like a C-section.
Yeah, they basically knocked her out, took the baby, and and they didn't kill her. They just kept her alive.
That's wild.
So she's and she what's crazy about all of this? Oh, here's the crazier part. She was with Sturgis in Miami and Lee Harvey Oswald, and she testified to this all under oath that she saw both of them loading up a bunch of guns into the trunk of a car, and then they took her with the guns with Lee Harvey Oswald and Frank Sturgis and a bunch of other guys to Dallas 2 days before the murder, and then they flew her back to Miami, and then she finds out that JFK was killed a few days later. So, and this is sworn testimony to Congress that she had said all these things that I told you. She swore to all this under oath, and they didn't believe her. or they just didn't
Crazy.
they didn't care. So like all of these connections, and Sturgis was working for Santo Trafficante at the time, and Trafficante, according to many people, knew exactly what was going to happen to JFK when it was going to happen, and that it was going to happen, that he was a part of it, and a lot of these guys, around him.
So speaking of Trafficante, what year was the whole thing where they paid the $1 million to get him out of jail in Cuba?
It was 1960, I believe.
So
1950. No, it was 1959. It was still in 1959.
Still 59. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming he gets out of jail. He does the whole CIA thing. How long do they keep trying until they're just like, he's at least the mob? How long is he involved in trying to get rid of Fidel until he's just like, all right, I give up?
Late 60s. So like
they tried for a decade.
For like a decade.
The mob tried to kill Fidel Castro for a decade.
For a decade.
Holy shit!
In fact, one of the last tries that they did was Cubela. So Cubela had been trying to basically tell them, look, all your crazy ideas, just give me a scope and a long-ass shot. Because what Cubela was afraid of, or what his mind was, like, I want to kill this dude and I want to be alive and not die. I want to kill him and dip. I don't want to be a martyr. I don't want to be like a suicide bomber. I want to go in here, get the job done, and get out. And they were trying all these other things, like, give me a rifle. And finally, in 1965, they gave him the rifle. It was with Manuel Artime. He finally met with him. They gave him the rifle.
The mob gives him the rifle?
The
CIA.
The CIA gives him the rifle. But he had already had some ties with the mob from before. And they ended up, the Cuban government found out. And they actually, I think through his wife or somebody, and they ended up arresting him, threw him in jail, sentenced him to death. And then Fidel writes a letter to the judge saying, hey, reprieve this guy. Don't kill him. He would send him books like every few days. And while in prison, Cubela apparently had a run of the place. He could go anywhere because he was a doctor. So he basically was helping out with the medical stuff. He would walk around all he wanted. And in 79, when they did the Mariel, he was let go. And he ended up going to Spain and became a doctor there. And he was like a pediatrician for like 50 years. He only passed away in 2003. That's like nice. he'd been around. So like he during his time in prison, he was very much, he was more free while he was in prison than he was before that because of all the craziness that was happening around. He was able to use his being a doctor to help himself during that time.
So that during that whole decade where the mob is heavily involved in trying to take out Castro, is it mainly Trafficante?
It was Roselli, Trafficante. Lansky wasn't as involved.
Right, Lansky basically moved on.
Lansky moved on once a lot of his properties were taken. Like he just kind of went that route. But yeah, I would say it was Roselli. Roselli was the main guy the CIA had tried to hire to get it done, and then Trafficante after in some ways.
So after a decade of trying to kill this guy, what does Trafficante decide to do? He just moved the same thing. He quits.
I think he got his. They were still trying after JFK was killed, but once that happened and it's the writing on the wall was for Cuba, Trafficante kind of moved on to his own. Like he kept Tampa and he had started getting crackdowns on the U.S. side, so they were already coming down. But they never got him for anything. He died in like the 80s, of natural causes supposedly. Right. So he wasn't even it's not like he was killed or anything.
Yeah, in Donnie Brasco, you have like when the New York crew comes to Florida and they're like, oh, let's go to Tampa or whatever, and then the Trafficante owns that part of the city and all that. So
yeah,
it's all.
Interconnected.
I've seen all the mafia movies and all the gangster stuff, so now I can piece it together.
Yeah. You can kind of see like, oh wow, these guys are. That's where they all were at the point. Yeah, 100%.
So Trafficante basically just goes back to Florida, business as usual. Yep. After 10 years of trying to kill this guy.
Yep.
Which is wild. At that point, the old timers kind of start getting old because you're talking about the 70s already.
Yep.
So
it's a new era. Like Cuba had already kind of moved into its own like space and was like in wars in the Congo with like the U.S. like doing proxy war stuff and all sorts. They had moved on, and
that whole
and the U.S. got into
did that Fidel did across Latin America. He started going to all the Latin American countries and like,
exactly kind of like trying to spread it there, and then the U.S. was distracted with Vietnam. That was their that's like they kind of were heavily focused on Cuba, but then once Johnson got in power and a lot of the stuff started happening, they wanted to kind of quell that and then move more towards Vietnam,
which was
mostly because Johnson owned the helicopter companies.
Oh yeah, there you go. Also fighting communists.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The mob after all this in the 70s, I can't even really think. I mean, they're basically just expanding, you know, like gambling, hookers, that kind of stuff.
Right.
What am I, man? I can't even think of the mob in the 70s. I can't even think of like
it's more like maybe Vegas.
Anything significant.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So is it an immediate? Who had the idea for Vegas? Was Vegas already going on?
Vegas had already been going on, but what's interesting about Vegas basically was the place where all of those guys that learned how to run those casinos under Lansky when he came in the 50s, all of them went to Vegas. So there's a huge Cuban contingent of like people that are the descendants of these card dealers that had gotten trained in Cuba in Vegas. And there's like a giant Cuban community there, mainly because of the revolution, and they had all gone over there.
So funny enough, so I'm in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to the teller, and she's kind of hot or whatever. I'm hitting on her, and I'm making conversation, and I'm like, "Oh, where you from?" She's like, "Oh, you know, my family's Mexican, but you know, whatever, I'm Mexican." I was like, "Okay." She's like, "Oh, where you from?" I'm like, "I'm from Miami, but my family's Cuban." And she gave me a look like a look of disgust, and I was like, "Excuse you?" Like that's the first time someone had like in my face been like, "You fucking dirty Cuban," like, and I'm like, "Yo, I'm a paying customer at your hotel. What's wrong with you?" Like, anyway, she didn't say, and I was like, "What's wrong with being Cuban?" But she stayed shut. She didn't say anything. She checked me in, and all right, have a good day. She kind of avoided it, so I didn't press the issue. I order an Uber, and I hop in the Uber, and there's this old poppy, like this. He must have been pushing 65.
Sure.
Old Cuban dude, long hair, beard. And immediately, he's like, starts speaking Spanish. He says hi to me in Spanish. I know he's Cuban. I know my people. I'm like, "Oh, you're Cuban. Me too. Whatever." And I'm like, "Dude, let me tell you something, bro. I had something weird happen to me. What's up with this? Like, do people like not like Cubans around here? Like, what's the deal?" And then he's like, "All right, bro. I gotta break it down for you. So, you have 3 groups of Cubans that came here. You have, and this is where I learned this. He's like, when Cuba and the mob fell apart, the mobsters brought all the Cubans that worked for them, and then that was the first wave of Cubans. They were all right. But then you had another big wave of Cubans during the Bacero era, like in 1994, the Rafters. Bro, and he was like, those guys were on some other shit. Like the only recorded incidences of like casino robberies in broad daylight were rafters. Cuban rafters that went to Vegas and tried to rob casinos at gunpoint in broad daylight. That's
Holy
like
shit.
the only recorded.
Yeah, some Tony Montana shit right there, bro.
For real. So imagine
it's those guys.
No one's ever been. I mean, I'm sure they've tried to rob the casino, but like do it smart on some Ocean's 11 stuff.
Yeah, not like
bro.
Legit,
these
like,
guys at gunpoint, broad daylight, gangster shit, Tony Montana style, like, bro. So after he told me that, I was like, yeah, no wonder they don't like us.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I can kind of see
I get it.
I could see it at that point.
Yeah, I gotta research that. I gotta interview one of those dudes that tried to rob one of those casinos or something. That's
100%.
crazy.
Yeah, but I think they came over there because there was such a already existing big Cuban population. It's like the centers like Miami, New Jersey, and Vegas.
Yeah, and now it's funny because every once in a while when I go to Vegas, I haven't gone in I went like 2 years ago. I always hop in the Uber and it's like a lady or like a Cuban dude, and then they're like, "Yeah, there's clubs here. There's like salsa clubs, and we get together. It's cool. I gotta go check out."
Yeah, it's like a little hidden Cuban community there.
All right, I'm gonna give you a laugh, and this is the first time I've ever told this story.
Okay.
It has to do with Cubans in Vegas, and all right, it was at Hustler. It was at a strip club.
Let's go.
Okay, so we, me and they do the whole spiel. It's like, "Oh, we're gonna pick you up in a limo. We're gonna take you to this club." The whole fucking Las Vegas also.
Sure.
You know how they are.
Yeah.
So they come pick us up in this limo. It's like 110 degrees out. The limo has no AC.
Oh my God.
We're like dying. So they pick us up in this limo, but it's like a hot box. They take us to the club. The club is awesome. Like it's like the design and all that, bro.
Sure.
The urinals are like a mouth. It's so funny. It's a girl. It's like a girl's lips with. It's so funny. It's hilarious. You get in and it's like a chick, like a statue of a chick riding a giant dick. It's funny.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious. We were like, dude, this place is cool.
That sounds great.
So we walk in and the girls are looking like. Ugh. So we were about to leave. We're there for 10 minutes, and me and my friend, who shall not be named, we're talking to each other in Spanish, right? Because that's our thing. And when we go to other places, we talk to each other in Spanish so people don't know what we're saying.
Right.
And he's like, wait, vamos, esto está. And like, he's like, let's go. This is.
Yeah.
And then one of the girls heard me talking in Spanish. And she comes and sits on my lap and he's like, oye, papi, ¿cómo tú estás? And I'm like, you're a Cuban.
You're Cuban.
And he's like, no, esto no. And she's like, oh, this is nothing. She whistles. And like 4 more Cuban girls come out of the back. And I'm like, bro, this is great. Hi, I'm Nelson. Nice to meet you. The Cuban stripper army.
The Cuban stripper army.
They're like, oye, we found some Cubans.
Oye, mira. Oye, mami.
It was great.
Aquí.
We went from about to leave from not like to like being surrounded
like
by these
VIP.
gorgeous Cuban women. It was great. It was great.
That's
my stripper story.
That's a good story. We don't need to know the ending, bro.
No, I didn't do it.
It wasn't happy. It's okay.
No, it's all right. But yeah, the Cubans in Las Vegas. It's funny. It's funny that whole thing, and obviously Miami,
Yeah.
Union City. You know, with Jose Miguel Batlle and all that. It's Cubans are so heavily tied into America,
100%.
and whether it's like the underworld or mainstream, whatever.
Yeah.
Where
No, 100%, man. And one of the reasons why I got so into this book was the thought of like this one random dude that I'd never heard of. Anything changes in his life in terms of like what his decisions were. Like if he did kill Fidel, if they had actually killed Batista, if they had not gone and helped out the revolution, or like any of these decisions this guy made, it ripples into the future to the point where Miami doesn't exist.
Right.
Or
exactly.
There's so many different variables that the world that we're living in now isn't what it would have been. And it threw me for a loop because I'm like, this one dude had that. That means that pretty much all of us have that. And that like all of our actions, we have no idea. Like you make one decision, I'm going to go to this school. Well, then you go to this school and then you're going to meet this person. Then you meet this person, then you meet that other person. Then you go to this job and then you get this money. And then it's a whole path that could lead into an entire city or another place or all these things. Right. And it blew my mind that this one guy could have that much of an impact. And it just was like eye-opening to see, and then to learn about my own history. Like, how am I here? Because like I wouldn't have been born. Both my parents left Cuba and they met years later in the 80s, in Venezuela.
My parents too.
My parents wouldn't have never met. I would have never been born. You and I may not even exist in that world.
So my mom, the reason Scarface for me is such a personal, like aside from the fact that it's the greatest movie ever made,
Sure.
Al Pacino, all that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. My mother came in Mariel. So ever since, my first memories are my mother telling me stories of, I came on a boat and I was a little kid. I was like your age. I was like 8 years old and I was around all these scary people. And then all of a sudden we were in Miami a few hours later and they took us to this tent and I stayed in this tent for a few days before your aunt came and picked me up. So that whole scene of him getting interrogated by cops, getting taken to some camp, it's personal. It's my mother, literally. So, right. And so many other people.
It's where you
my uncle.
Your family went through that.
Yeah, so that's why, I have such a personal connection to that because not only did so many Cubans come in 1980 in that fashion. Aside from that, obviously a lot of people with criminal intentions came over. It was real.
Cubela was let out at the same time. Literally the same time that they let the Mariel, when they emptied the prisons, he was one of the ones that they emptied out, and he ended up going to Spain. Like, imagine they don't do that. Imagine the Mariel doesn't happen.
Bro. Isn't that crazy?
You know,
to think about that.
Think about that. You know, or
Scarface would have never been made.
Right. And we wouldn't have this podcast.
We wouldn't, because really, if you think about it, that kind of my fascination with gangsters. I mean, obviously Tony Montana's like,
sure.
So
that was the origin of it.
It's crazy, man.
So yeah, so there's so many things that
bro, for real,
could have been different.
My brother, this has been a ton of fun.
This is great.
You know, I love talking about gangster stuff. It's
100%.
Like
gangster stuff, Cuba stuff. You know, little Tony Montana, some pineapple. You know,
pineapple.
Just some pineapple, man.
So that's funny. So usually I wrap it up asking the same few questions. I have to change them up in your case because you're not a criminal. What's next for you?
Definitely not becoming a criminal, for sure. Or at least not. I don't want to.
For sure not. No,
Hopefully
not happening.
No, I'm gonna keep going with my book. I actually gone a little bit viral with some of my videos and stuff through for a Spencer Pratt campaign. I did. If you check out Latinos por Poder or Latinos por Pratt, that's me behind the scenes for it. So I've been doing those. Gonna keep doing my thing. I have a business that I run. I'm an attorney. I do random consulting and things like that. But I'm gonna keep going with this book. And I want to make it into a TV series and into its own little mini universe that will hopefully bring to light a lot of the stuff that happened in Cuba, and then will hopefully then help us unite the Cuban community.
It's a good time because the Cuba topic is hot.
So
it would be good timing to land like a media deal or something.
It'd be nice.
And
anybody out there, let me know. Bacardi, hit me up. I'm just saying.
The need for content, like these companies can't meet the demand for content, so it's a great time to put this out there and try to make it happen.
100%.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a good father and a good husband, more than any of the other things, and someone that was not afraid to say what they thought about everything. And if I can say what I truly feel without hesitation or fear, that is a win in my book.
At this point, I usually ask, do you believe in redemption? Because I interview a lot of reformed criminals, so I'm very interested to see their perspective on what redemption means to them, if someone is capable of being redeemed and that kind of stuff. But in your case, since, you don't break the law, what's your opinion?
Allegedly.
Yeah. What's your opinion on this, especially after seeing how heavily tied the criminal underworld and the mafia and that kind of stuff is just to world history? What's your worldview on maybe the criminal underworld before you started this project and after?
Everything's incentives, man. Everything. Whether it's, you have the incentive to commit a crime or the incentive to not commit a crime, more often than not, the incentives are driving the actions than somebody's like in ill intent. I think people want the same things. They want to have security. They want to have, some level of feeling like they're important. They want to take care of their family. They want to like do something. And if you are in an environment where that something is breaking the law and drug dealing because that's how you can make it, that's how the hierarchy works and that stuff, then that's what's going to happen. If you're in it because you're going to be the top lawyer in school or you're going to do all this stuff, the systems that we set up, I feel like are a much bigger determinant of who comes out of that than somebody's, like specific thing. Like I don't see people as like this guy's always going to be a criminal as a criminal and is never going to change. So like in terms of like the redemption side of things, I think people are people, and obviously there's an element of your own self and your own choices, that will determine how it is that you're seen. But I think a lot of what we see as crime is the societies around those people kind of funneling them into choices that maybe they wouldn't have made those choices had things been different around them. But sometimes there is no choice. It's either you're going to die or you're going to steal the bread. And most times, people are survivors. Like that's life. Like life wants to keep itself going. So when that happens, you end up finding that sometimes you got to just do what you got to do to make yourself be able to live and perpetuate your family or whatever it is that you're fighting for. So
another interesting question that popped up into my head now. This story specifically has a huge tie into politics and the criminal underworld. how similar is government, policing, politics to like the criminal mindset and the criminal way of operations?
One's legal and one's illegal.
But it's exactly the same, right?
They're the
Isn't it
same
crazy?
thing. You're doing the same. They're doing it. I mean, the cops are the mob in terms of like they're the protect. It's the there's a protection racket. You're paying your taxes to make sure that you're protected at night, and then you have your people that are the leaders, and they're kind of like Teflon. They're like, hey, I didn't order the cop to kill the guy. I didn't, it's like. And there's enforcers and like it's all as the philosophy goes, as above so below. It's very similar in that sense where things are the way they work, and they can work in the small contingent and they work in the same way. I mean, think about just the United Nations, like international law. International law is who has the guns, like, and then
Pretty
the
much.
U.S. says this is what the law is. This is what's going to be. They're all fighting against each other. The countrywide. You're talking about like different mobs of different iterations and who.
I'm not saying it, but some people say Trump operates like a gangster. Trump is operating like an international gangster. And then the video of him crip walking.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he does operate like a mobster for sure. Is it good or bad? Hey,
it's one of those things where with politics, I feel like there's an element of fakery and imagery in front.
Yeah.
A facade of
smoke and mirrors.
that hey, this is all legitimate. Hey, no, this is all good. But Trump kind of breaks through that and is more real politique in that like I don't give a shit. I was like, you're gonna give me the oil. And I'm gonna give you the money.
Or you're not gonna give me the oil.
Or you're not gonna give me the oil. Okay, here's a gun. Now
I'm gonna take it.
I'm gonna take the oil, and that's and it's and the other guys do it, but they'll be like, oh well, we'll have a treaty first, or like they do it in the back
shoot the guy in
rooms.
the back of the head.
Yeah, what the difference with Trump is he just does it out in the open. That
I
really
agree.
is the biggest difference between it, and that people and the ones that I feel like are the most against that are the ones that are doing it in secret.
Yeah, for sure. I think
Because they don't want it out there.
And from what I've been able to see, the reason he has raging fans is because of that. He just does it in your face. It is what it is. There's no more bullshitting anymore. Whether it's good or bad, whether what he's doing is good or bad. Listen, I'm a ex-con, bro. I'm not even like I can't carry a gun.
Yeah.
I couldn't vote until the other day. Like
Yeah.
that conversation is not for me. But it's probably why people that love him so much, because
100%.
it's just it is what it is.
100%.
My brother, this was a ton of fun.
This is great.
We'll do this again maybe when you come out with the next book.
Yeah, next book. We'll
Yeah.
do this for sure.
Last thing, how can people connect with you?
CubelaLibre.com. I have a bunch of the stuff there. And then you can find me on all the platforms at Yo Adrian 305 and Latinos por Poder.
Sweet. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
Have a safe trip back to LA.
Thank you, sir.
We'll miss you in Miami.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Alrighty, guys. That was another episode of Honor Among Thieves with your special guest, Adrian. Make sure you go pick up your copy of Cubela Libre. It's a pretty dope story. As always, guys, push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless. And we will catch you on the next one. Say goodnight to the black guy.